Okay. As mentioned last month, chapter leadership's working on a spring project management symposium. This will be virtual and free for all members. For those who participated in last month's virtual event with Michelle Hutchins Medina, we went into breakout sessions and got a lot of good feedback from members that they enjoyed the breakout session. Collaboration. So that's something to look forward to as a feature of our symposium. Our scholarship application window is open towards close to the end of the month. We have one open scholarship to any graduating senior in the county. So that's working with high school guidance counselors on their applications. And then also a scholarship to any graduating senior family member of a valid chapter member. That's not restricted to the county. We realize we have members who live in Frederick County and Northern Virginia, but does need to be in the local area. So if you have a family member in California, that would apply. So if you go to the website and click on the news menu bar, the application and more information is there, and as well as send in any emails to the chapter leadership for more questions. Okay. Our president, Mr. Charlie Geis, has had some ups and downs, health problems in his family. So for your thoughts and prayers list, please put the Geis family on that list. Seminars World, which is a PMI Global event, was successful in February. It's back in March towards the end of the month. Speakers include Lisa and David from Leadership Techniques, Mr. Carl Pritchard, Dr. Martins, all friends and past presenters of the chapter on multiple occasions. There is a little bit of a cost to it, but it's a good way to get 25 plus PDUs in a couple days shot. And for those who have education allowances from their companies, this is a good way to apply that too. Okay, PMI Global also has, in the past 6 to 8 months, has put a focus on discipline agile. They have 2 certifications currently in their Scrum Master and Senior Scrum Master, and then an Agile Coach and a Value Stream Consultant, which are expected to start in April. Similar to Scrum Alliance's Certified Scrum Master, a 2-day training course is required prerequisite for the certification. So you can't just self-study and take the test. It's that 2-day training course. And the tests are similar, where it's a non-proctored test through Pearson. So for those who hold their certified Scrum Master or certified product owner certifications with pride close to them, this is just more competition. Working on agile projects currently with the federal government. One agile certification is usually sufficient, but it's always good to learn other principles and frameworks. And our May monthly meeting will actually feature a Discipline Agile Scrum Master presentation given by Leadership Techniques. David Newman just took the exam late last year and passed, and Lisa passed within the past couple days. So we'll get a breakdown for the hour from 2 certified discipline agile scrum masters, and are looking forward to that. That registration is open, and we're finalizing our April speaker, and that registration should be open in the next week or 2. Okay, our virtual, the first virtual project management day of service was a couple of weeks back. They had a great turnout. They utilized the University of Maryland Center for Project Management, Cisco WebEx. Almost 60 project managers were working with 13 nonprofits and successfully completed 19 projects. So I know Bill Newton's on the call right now. Beth May, who doesn't look like is on the call, has been the leader of that organization for the past 3 years, and she's been a longtime chapter member. So we're proud of Beth and proud of the event. And Beth May someday could receive one of the PMI Professional Awards. That nomination window closes on 1 April. There's Senior Project Management Awards for the PMI Fellow and the Eric Jennett Project Management Excellent Award. For the PMI Fellow, Mr. Lee Lampert, who's presented our chapter on more than 10 occasions, as well as Dr. Al Zatoun, hold that designation. Mr. Carl Pritchard was a recent winner of the Eric Jennett Excellence Award, but there's also Young Professional Awards for 25 to 35-year-olds. So within your workspaces, if somebody's really impressed you, or if there's a project that you're really proud of, take the half hour to an hour to submit an application. And even if you don't win, the visibility that could come with that could be really good for your organizations. If you go to pmi.org, the nomination page is on, the link is on the front page there. Okay, even in a virtual environment, our education partners are doing great things. If you look at the calendar on our website, we have as many classes as we know about that they're offering. So again, for those who have education and training allowances within their companies, investing in the great education partners that we have is a great way to use that money and gain some insight. We have received some questions on the PMP exam, which changed at the start of the year in anticipation of the 7th edition of the PMBOK release, probably late this year. We're working on getting a presentation to focus more on what changes to the test and kind of how that impacts how PMPs will be looked at in the future. So stay tuned for that. Okay. Our featured speakers for this evening are the co-owners of Yes Career Coaching and Resume Writing Services, Ms. Katherine and Mr. Michael Akbar. Ms. Akbar stands alone as the world's only interview Aikido coach. She'll break that down a little bit more into what that entails and if she's planning on others joining her exclusive club. Mr. Akbar holds many certifications in certified coaching, business analysis, and their company successfully put more than 3,000 professionals in a position to obtain the job offers that they desire through their coaching and services. So we know the past, in a couple of weeks, the past year hasn't been a great time to look for a job with the pandemic, but there have been people who have gotten good opportunities. How the federal government, how the private sector looks at teleworking will probably forever change. So we'll start to see what that looks like more towards late summer, early fall. And the best time to find your dream job is often when you're currently employed and have a job. So even if you're content but not necessarily happy, we look forward to some of the tips that are given during this presentation, just to put on your tool belt for maybe later on in the year or your career. So we're happy to have the Akbars with us, and we'll turn it over to them.
I can start. Yeah. But good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight. And I am going to start our little slide here.
You're gonna share your screen.
Oh, I'm not sharing the screen yet. Sorry. So are you able to see our screen now?
Yep. So if you just want to put it in presentation mode, we should be good to go.
Perfect.
So,
Perfect.
if anybody needs us, because we can't see you anymore.
Yeah, you have to shout at us now. So this is the only slide that has any picture on it. So before we move on from this slide, I'm wondering if everyone who is attending this presentation would feel like the picture to the left or to the picture to the right when it comes to networking and how you feel about the whole thing. Before we go too far, I wanted to do a little polling as to what about this presentation got you motivated to attend tonight's session. And while you are responding to Matthew, I'm going to share a little story about my own experience with networking. A few years ago, I noticed that one of my former colleagues that I had not met with for a number of years had gotten a promotion on LinkedIn. So I just shot back a congratulations to him. And about 2 weeks later, he came back and said, "Well, Michael, I have a friend who has this company, a federal contractor, and they just got a new contract, but they have no idea how to grow it. Do you think you might be able to help them a little bit?" Now, I had my own business at that time, but I said, "Well, yeah, sure, I'll be glad to talk to them and see how I can help them." Well, to make the long story short, that one congratulation note on LinkedIn turned out to be a very lucrative business for me while I was helping that company. And it was a small business. So while I was helping them, they were actually so small that they were sharing space with another company. They were renting like a couple of desks in another company. And I noticed that while I was there, that there was one gentleman in that company who was very shy, very quiet. Nobody seemed to bother with him or talk to him. And for the reasons that I will share with you later in this presentation, I just felt naturally interested to reach out to him and talk to him and get to know him. Fast forward a number of years later, I get a call from this gentleman. He happened to be the very close friend of a president of another federal contracting company. And the same thing, the president wants to hire someone to help them grow their business and sell the company. Michael, would you mind talking to this gentleman and see how you can help? Both of these situations that I shared with you were cases where I was not competing with anyone. I was the only person who talked to these people. To be honest with you, I don't remember they having even looked at my resume, but it was on the power of the recommendation and the reference that I had that I got to look at these two opportunities and actually turn them into great opportunities for myself and those employers. So now I want to pause and see, I don't know if you had any feedback from the audience in terms of what were the reasons that motivated them to attend this meeting before we go any further.
A combination of just the first Wednesday of the month, attending the chapter meetings, as well as looking for more competitive stance to be more marketable for future employment.
Okay, wonderful.
And with resumes changing in terms of college degrees not being as important as maybe they used to be, the value of certifications, experience, some are curious as to if like the edX and Coursera courses really hold any professional weight. Should those be on resumes? Those type of questions. So.
Well, Matthew, I've heard that the college degree is important in Washington because if you don't have one, you won't be qualified to answer the phones here.
Yes, ma'am.
You're laughing, right?
Hoping somebody gets my dry sense of humor. Yes, a college degree does not get you very far in this highly educated city, metro area. So, You're absolutely right. Experience and certifications are king.
And relationships. So the next slide that I have is about, who has or who experiences challenge with networking. I've heard people say, well, I tried networking once and it's just not for me. It doesn't work for me. The truth of the matter is all of us, irrespective of, this, my second bullet kind of refers to some Myers-Briggs personality, whether you're introvert, extrovert, or you're a judger, perceiver, whatever, all of us have advantages and, pitfalls when it comes to networking. So we all share those, and I'm going to touch on some of those later on. But networking success really is based on two pillars. One is the techniques, the things that we got to do, and that's what a lot of time people focus on. And the second one is what I call the inner game. What goes in our head that really makes the execution of those techniques successful. In the absence of getting the inner game right, in my opinion, it sometimes becomes difficult to really do a good job with the techniques. And when I talk about techniques, that a lot of time people focus on is the email script. How do I reach out to somebody? What should I put in my email? How should I have my phone conversation? What kind of questions should I ask? What kind of follow-up should I have? And I know Katherine does a lot of work with our clients for the interview techniques. I don't know if you want to make any comment on this before I go any further.
Yeah. So I think what you're getting at here is that techniques are the how, but they're not the heart of what's going to create effectiveness. And before we even talk about what's going to create effectiveness, I also wanted to say that there are lots of different kinds of networking. And for somebody to say, I tried networking once and it's not for me, is kind of weird, because we network all the time naturally in life, right? We move to a new city and we want to find a, new hairdresser or something. We might look on Yelp or Google, but we also might ask our neighbor or somebody whose hair we really like to give us a referral. That's a kind of networking. And in terms of networking for new jobs, there are also different kinds. Some people say they don't like networking because they went to a big noisy event and they felt awkward and they wanted to bury themselves in their phone or their alcoholic drink. But that is not the only kind of networking, and not necessarily the most effective kind. So that's the first thing to remember if you're one of those folks who feels like, I tried networking once and it didn't work. The second thing is the heart of the matter. I mean, networking is about knowing people and having people know and trust you. So before you even think about the email script and what you're going to say in a call, you need to have your heart in the right place. You need to be intending to create value for the other person as well as for yourself. Because otherwise it could become just an exercise in how do I use other people to get what I want? And people feel that, and nobody wants to be used. So that's not going to get you very far. Of course, you don't want to go the other way either, where you spend all your time talking to someone who's lonely instead of getting what you want. So we have to have our heart in the right place, but also be smart about how to use our time.
That's
And
great.
just from our association perspective, since the pandemic really reared its head to events in April of last year, like we've seen membership drop 15%. And just because, and most people's like exit interviews are like, I joined for the networking, the events, the social aspect of it, to meet people. And the virtual events are fine for learning, but you don't have that networking piece.
Yeah.
So as society kind of comes back, hopefully over the next 6 to 12 months, it'll be interesting to see if how many people rejoin the association, or how many people say, well, my professional life didn't change much without it, so don't need associations as much as I thought maybe I did.
Well, Matthew, that's a great point. And the thing is, networking or learning any new skill, it can be analogized to going to the gym for the first time, right? If you go to a gym a couple of times, you're not going to come home buff. And you can't conclude that gyms don't work because you didn't really give it enough consistent effort. Now, it may be that it is hard to network over a Zoom call, but there's lots of much more effective ways to network during the pandemic, and they don't require being in person. Now, some people like to look at whatever's happening in life and make it a negative. So they could say, oh, well, it's really hard to network during COVID. I actually heard this the other day. And I thought, why? I think it might be easier to network during COVID, because think about it this way. Although you're not meeting people in person as much, people do have more time. So they don't have commutes, which was eating up a lot of time for people in this area in most cases. And also, a lot of people are tired of being cooped up in their house with their immediate family and would love to talk to another adult. So people might welcome meeting someone new and helping them out more than they would before. So something to keep in mind.
And also for the association on another, not exactly what you're talking about, but kind of parallel to that, because a lot of people are thinking, well, I knew the value of association as a place where I would network. And now because of COVID, we are not going to network. So why should I be a member? Or, for those who have those kind of objections, so to speak, I think this is opportunity to really come up with a new product, so to speak. In other words, the networking in the COVID time without necessarily, breathing on each other, it can be a product for the association to offer. And it's kind of like along the line of some of the things we're covering tonight. But of course, you can put a lot more meat and structure about that, whether it's in a video or another series of, sessions that, people start saying, oh my God, yeah, I'm not showing up there. I don't have to, go through the commute and traffic, but I'm getting as much value from the being associated with the organization. So yeah, we all have to kind of adapt to that. Now coming back to what we were talking about, I mentioned about that until we get the inner game right, it's kind of hard to do the techniques right. It's we got to get the why right, and the why is really why do we want to do all of this stuff? Why should we go through the trouble? And sometimes we have to come up with different ways to kind of, especially for people who find networking not coming natural to them. Some people love to go to meetings, whether they are effective at it or not, they just love doing this stuff. And then there are others who feel like, I hate, I don't want to be too close to people. I don't want to, see a lot of people, whatever.
Or they feel anxious.
Or they feel anxious, right? So for the second category, I'm going to just focus on some of the things that have been helpful to me, because I think naturally I'm more of an introvert and had to kind of look at things in a way that I can see the value as to, again, going back to the why. And I'm going to use the analogy that some of you may have heard before, that if you ask somebody, challenge somebody to walk on a 2 feet wide board, let's say by 10 feet or 20 feet, and the board is on the ground, it's pretty easy thing to do, right? We can all walk on that board and it is not a problem. But what if that board that now is connecting to 10-story buildings? And we're going to ask, you remember that board, the 2 feet board that you comfortably walked on while it was on the ground? How about now? Would you want to do that? And I don't know about the rest of you, but I would feel pretty nervous about doing that. But what if the other side of that board was someone who is dear to you, like a child or your loved ones, and there's a fire, and the only way you can rescue them is to do that, walk between the 10-story board? I am pretty certain most of us will do that, because now we have a strong motivation to do it. So the changing of our motivation and the reason we want to do things are going to be critical for being successful at networking. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Again, I'm just staying with the inner game side of doing networking. Now,
I want to see where you're going to go with this.
yeah. So now, before anybody called the cops on me on this one, you know, maybe we should get into the drug business. Let me tell you what I mean by that. You know, most really successful people, you know, why do highly successful people set up foundations and charities and try to do good? Because it is what I think human beings are built for. You know, it's being able to give and do good is really the most potent intoxicant. So in a way, if we are approaching people for networking, but we are able to create that sense of usefulness and the fact that they are being such a great person by helping someone, if we are able to create that feeling, then yes, we are giving them the best drug that they can enjoy. It's really the opportunity to reach out to people. I have started to feel personally that, do I have value? Is there, as a result of my conversation with someone, is that person is going to be benefiting from? I may be talking to someone who is giving me tips about, you know, a certain organization or people, et cetera, but is there an opportunity for me to be of use to them? And sometimes all somebody else wants is to be in a position to help you. It's a shift in our mindset. So, you know, I have coaching clients who, you know, it is so comfortable for them to pick up the phone, call strangers, do Zoom with strangers. And then there are others that, you know, I said, well, you know, you should look up some people on LinkedIn, and their immediate reaction is, you know, but they're strangers. I don't know them. What if they don't answer? Yeah, statistically, a good number of them would not answer, but then there would be others who would. So, so it is really the shift in the mindset that we want to make. So, and again, I'm focusing on people who have a little bit more discomfort with actually doing the outreach. And we talked about doing good and giving as the most potent intoxicant. And if it is that good, why shouldn't we use it ourselves? And I'm going to give you the example that I started with tonight. I mentioned that I reached out to a gentleman in an office that everybody ignored. Nobody wanted to bother with him. And I felt like, you know, it would be a great opportunity for me to reach out, and I really didn't have any motivation at that time. That was just like, I felt naturally that, you know, I would like to know this person and getting more excited about life. And lo and behold, a few years later, he's calling me and introducing me to a president of a company that has continuously led to more and more income and opportunity for me, or did at that time. And you know, the second bullet that I have here really applies to in-person networking, but you know, you can extend that to in a broader sense. Again, being, as I said, being a little bit introvert myself, one of the things I discovered is that when I go to a large group of people and I may feel, again, anxious and hesitant to reach out, one day I came up with this idea, well, what if I was the host? What if these people showed up at my house? Now it is my obligation to reach out and actually see how they are doing. So I started to practice that. You know, I would look around and see what, you know, who is in this crowd that looks even more anxious than I am. So let me go to them, shake their hands, and see how they are doing. How are they experiencing that? And it was an amazing experience that, you know, since then it's become a habit that, you know, has made me so much more comfortable just, you know, reaching out to people. And of course, you know, that was in-person networking. And one day we're going to go back to that. But I think it equally applies, you know, an extension of that applies to how you would, you wanted to say something?
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
The great thing about that technique also is it makes you feel a lot more confident. You know, when you go up to people and you say, oh, hi, how are you? You know, how can I help you? Suddenly you feel like you have a purpose and you don't feel awkward anymore because you now are there for them as opposed to trying to sell yourself or trying to make a connection. You're just trying to be of service. So it makes you, it calms your anxiety. It makes you feel more confident when you are playing the host. So try it.
Yeah,
You'll like
absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. And, along those lines, on LinkedIn, we have a group called the inner circle for yes clients, both current clients and former clients. And, that's one of the first thing I ask people to do is say, join the inner game. And the first thing you want to do on the inner circle, join the inner circle. And one of the first thing you want to do is to introduce yourself, share with people what kind of experiences you've had, what organization you have worked for, and how you could be of help to others. So rather than immediately say, hey, I'm desperately trying to get into CDC. Can somebody introduce me to somebody at CDC? Just start by coming from a place of power and richness of what you have done in the past and how you could be helpful to others. And of course, the other thing I highly recommend to people who are in that stage where they are transitioning, when they are trying to, looking for a different job, is to, engage an accountability partner who could be yet another person who is in their similar situation. But when you do have someone with whom you can, exchange notes, hey, this is what I did, this is what I tried, it didn't work this way, how about you? You can learn a lot. We can learn a lot from each other. So so let's talk a little bit about, so I talked about the inner game. What do we want to have in our mind to be more comfortable about going out and reaching out and talking to people? And now I wanted to kind of touch on some of the items that are classified more as a technique. But before I do that, maybe I should pause for a minute and see, Matthew, if you have any comments, or if the audience have any thoughts or comments that they want to bring up at this point.
Open it up to anyone who has any questions, or if anything's hit home that you've seen in the past few years yourselves.
Hey, this is Jerry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Networking is really a two-way street. And to be honest, everybody really needs to network when they're in a tight situation, when they get laid off, right? Or when they're looking for a job. They have to reach out to as many people as possible just to shake the bushes and see what opportunities may be out there. And then once you do land a job, and this is something, I was laid off in like 2017, and, it took me about 5 months to find a job. And then, I was a manager of a bunch of people at Hewlett Packard, and, recently a bunch of them got laid off. And I hadn't talked to them, period, for, since I had left the company. But I reached out to them and just said, how's it going? This is what you should do. Get that LinkedIn all, nice and pristine. And so, and that's what I mean. It's a two-way street. I mean, you got to reach out to people. People have to reach out to you. And everybody has to do it at some point in their life. And they should continue to do it.
Yeah. Jerry, I want to ask you something. It's a little bit more personal. How did you feel when you were reaching out and helping them and giving them suggestions? What was your feeling about that process?
No, I mean, I was just, they had done the same thing for me. Well, some of them had, but I wasn't looking at anyone's thinking, oh, well, you didn't reach out to me when I was looking for a job. I mean, I was just reaching out to them, just saying, hey,
yeah,
here's some opportunities that I know of in Atlanta or wherever they may be.
Yeah. I had a mentor who many years ago commented a term I hadn't heard before. He told me about the God of prospecting. And I asked him, what is the God of prospecting? He said, well, this is the God where, if you go out and do the things that you are supposed to do, and, in this case, networking, he will reward you, but the reward is not always coming from exactly the spot that you thought. So just like what you were saying, you could be reaching out and helping people. That doesn't mean that, that those very same people are the one who come and help you. But in this complex world that we live in, it's going to pay off. And, as you said, I guess the two-way street is a really good term to use for that.
That's a great point, Michael. You can't ever look at this as transactional. Like, I helped you, therefore you should help me. Or you helped me, therefore I owe you, and I have to pay that off as soon as possible. Let people contribute to you and enjoy contributing to people, and don't keep score, because the universe has a way of repaying you independently. And what I've found in life is that many times I've tried really hard to make a difference with someone. Like, I've really tried to get them to see something. And sometimes those people I tried the hardest with, I was a complete failure with. I made no difference with them whatsoever. And then other times I said something that was so simple to me, so obvious. And they come back to me years later and say, that thing that you said to me, that made such a difference in my life. And okay, I'm humble. I don't know how I can help, but I have to trust that if my intention is to be helpful, that eventually people will be helped.
If I look back in my career, and I do that once in a while, just as a reminder to myself, there have been so many people who have done such a profound help for me, which didn't cost them anything, but for me, it was life-changing. And for me to remind myself of that is that, I'm kind of like an older guy right now. I feel like, I can do the same. I can in so many ways, by just referring someone to look up something or do something simple, I can make a change that could be really important to them. And at the same time, it wouldn't cost me anything. I used to work, just as another example of this, I worked in Singapore for General Electric. And one day I was told that the plant was shut down and we had 2 weeks to find another job. Now I could not leave. I couldn't work in that country unless I had, the permission to work for another company, and there was no way I could find another job in 2 weeks. So I was panicked a little bit. But then my boss came to me and said, "Well, I have heard that your counterpart in Richmond, Virginia, is going to go to Northern Virginia or something like that because his wife got a really great job. And I was wondering if you're interested to interview for that." I said, "You're kidding me? Of course I would love to interview for that." So
and the context of this, guys, is that he couldn't go back to his own country. So he would have been stateless
absolutely.
without a job.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have a country to go to. So a 10-minute phone interview, no resume, talking to someone for 10 minutes. They paid for my flight back to the US, and I ended up working for GE in the US. Now, I cannot put a price on that. It was life-changing for me. And at the same time, it didn't cost my boss anything. She was just being so So with things like that happening in our lives all the time, I feel personally obligated to do the best I can for other people because I owe so much. I mean, this is just one story. If this session goes on for 6 hours, I can tell you a lot more other similar stories of how kind and generous people have been to me in terms of finding opportunities. So let's talk just briefly about what I mean by technique. I Interview Aikido, something that Katherine is going to talk about a little bit later, is critical, in my opinion, for networking. And it really goes back to when you have an opportunity to talk to someone, what is it that you want to talk about? And how do you go about that? The point that I think we have already mentioned now a few times is that it's not always about us. it's also about them. And I love this quote by Teddy Roosevelt that says, you know, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I will share with you just my own personal experience in terms of hiring now. You know, we hire people all the time for all kind of positions, whether it is, you know, technical, operational, et cetera, et cetera. And a person may be very knowledgeable, a person may be very expert at what they do, but in all honesty, as an employer, that's not the criteria I'm looking for, because every expertise, unless it is critically, absolutely necessary right away, where I have to hire the expert, techniques can be learned. You know, you can take a course, you can do this, you can do that. I want to hire somebody who covers my back. I want to hire somebody that I can fully trust, that, you know, they would be a partner for me, that they would really care for what is important to me. And I can assure you, I don't know what they write in books or what people tell each other, that criteria that I mentioned, even if employers don't mention that, that is a hidden criteria for employment. Do I like this guy? Do I like this person? Can I trust them? That is really critical. And it really goes back to, you know, how much we can show, how much do we care about the other person?
And we were talking about qualifications at the beginning of this call, and I wanted to point out that the most qualified person doesn't necessarily get the job. A lot of people naively believe that that's the case. And then if I say that it's not, they immediately go to, oh, well, that's because of racism, sexism, ageism, or some other kind of nepotism bias of some sort. But that's not the case either. It's just that the qualifications may not be as important as the character and the comfort that the person feels about you when they think about working with you. Now, neuroscience has actually proven that decisions are made emotionally. They have to be made emotionally. Now, you might be thinking, oh, not I'm very rational. But the science shows that if the part of your brain that's responsible for emotions is knocked out, you will not be able to make any decisions. So whether we think we're emotional or irrational or whatever we think about ourselves, the science shows that all decisions are made emotionally. So that means that the hiring manager might come up with some rationale for why they chose the candidate they chose, which sounds very dry and has to do with qualifications.
That's just the rationale.
But that is not actually what happened in their brain when they were making the decision. The decision was, do I trust this person? Do I like this person? Do I have confidence that having them on the team will make my life better? And the problem is that when we are looking for a job, usually we go into a very needy place. Our mind is thinking, I really need a job. I'm running out of rainy day funds, or I never had a rainy day fund, or my God, I have 2 kids in college, or I'm in a toxic work environment, or I just need somebody to give me a chance. You bring all that needy energy into a job interview or a networking situation, and the other person is going to be instantly repelled. Just like in dating, when you meet that person who is so needy of a relationship, your first reaction is likely to be to run the other way, because nobody wants to be sucked into all those needs. Everybody wants somebody who's going to meet their needs. So what I actually recommend is that you use your imagination, because one of the problems here is that I know what I need. I know what my problems are, but I don't know what your problems are. I mean, intellectually, I know that you must have problems and needs, but it's not really real to me. It's only real to me in a very theoretical way. So to make it more real to me so that I can be empathic with you, I have to imagine that your problems are worse than mine. So maybe I think that you're in a better situation than I am because maybe I don't have a job and you do. Well, what if I change the scenario? So I say, yes, you have a job, but your spouse is unemployed and you have 2 kids in college. So actually, you're in a tighter financial place than I am even. Or maybe I'm thinking, I'm in a place where I can't grow in my job. There's nowhere to go up. And your problem is you're actually being sexually harassed by your boss, so like, not because it's true, but just because I don't know what the other person's problems are. So I have to use my imagination to imagine that they have problems more serious than my own, just so I care about them. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm really okay compared to this person. So let me really be there for this person. Let me see if I can make their life better. Let me make sure that at least they have an enjoyable hour with me, if it's an hour-long interview, or an enjoyable, whatever it is, half hour if you're doing a networking call or something. So try that.
And that lends well to one of the questions we had in chat of what's a bigger red flag on a resume, in your opinion? Staying at a job for less than a year and a half and constantly hopping every year, or a gap in employment 2 to 3 years. So you spoke more to the compassion of looking at the situations, but a lot of resumes don't even get to that point because they're already discarded because of those two things. So your thoughts on that?
Okay, yeah. Well, the thing is, usually job seekers have something they're insecure about. Maybe it was the job they were let go from. Maybe it was the fact that they're just shy of a degree, or they went to a lower quality university. There's something in their mind that they're sure is holding them back. And I got to tell you, with my experience working with 3,000 people to help them get a new job, it's usually not what they think it is that's keeping them from getting a new job. But the fixation on that one thing definitely can harm the success in the job search. So I would say, you were out of work for 2 to 3 years. Is there a good reason? Like, I was taking care of my children. I was taking care of my aging parents. I had a medical leave of absence. Whatever it is, don't make a big deal about it. If they ask you, or, even on your resume, I would recommend, if you have a gap that long, that you do put something there like family caregiver, 2018 to 2020. Fine, no problem. I mean, nobody needs to know. I wouldn't say like, mother to 3 small children or something like that, because especially women can be discriminated against for having children. But if you put something gender neutral that tells them what you were doing, that is something everybody can understand and respect, that should not have any impact whatsoever on your ability to get a new job. Now, the other question was, what was the other question?
That was the question as to whether.
No, there was another, job hopping.
Job.
Yes, now job hopping is definitely a concern for employers. So you're going to need to have something to say to make them feel that they're not going to be left in the lurch by you, as they may imagine other employers have. So for example, I was once asked why I had so many short-term jobs, and I walked them through my resume and I explained, this was a short-term contract. This one I got, my husband finally got a visa to come to the United States, and so we left the country and so on. I gave them a brief explanation, and I did get that job. Now, if you actually were a job hopper, that's another issue. You definitely want to do some soul searching or get some therapy or whatever you need to do to see if there's some part of you that gets sort of spooked and you bolt, or if now if it's something out of your control, like you've gotten jobs that haven't worked out, then you might want to ask yourself if you're doing enough due diligence before you take a job. And it could just be a run of bad luck too. And whatever, if that's the case, just give a brief explanation that does not reveal you have any baggage about the issue. Stop and smile.
So what I want to also add to what you were saying is, if you have an opportunity to speak to the employer or the contact that you have, I think what Katherine was talking about is absolutely correct, that you have the opportunity to do that. But if you have a resume that has those gaps, and your concern is that it's not so much whether I can justify it or not, but I'm concerned that with this resume, they're not going to even consider me. They're not going to even invite me to an interview because of that. So that is where, again, we come back to the topic of what we're talking about tonight. If I have a resume that has holes in it, and the only way I can justify that is to get in front of them and talk to them, that becomes the goal. Networking becomes your critical tool basically. If you have a chance to, I mentioned to you at least 3 or 4 opportunities tonight where I spoke to people, got a job, didn't even look at my resume because I was able to get myself and have a conversation and was able to, persuade them, not because of my good luck, but just because of the elements of interview Aikido that Katherine will talk a little bit more later on. I was able to convince them that, I could be a good match, I could be a good partner, that they can trust me. So especially when resume is in a situation where you are concerned it's not going to pass, the gatekeeper, nobody's going to pass it, or the hiring manager is going to look at it and there's no way they're going to invite me to the interview, then in particular, you need to find a different path to market yourself. And the only really other path known to us is to do networking, developing a network of advocates, champions who can help you get introduction so that you get a chance to sit down. Because a lot of things, Katherine mentioned, they're very justifiable. You may be on a contract that got canceled by the government in 3 months. What are you going to do? That was the nature of it, right? You could be a short-term consultant because of the nature of what you do. You come and set up an environment and, you're gone and done in 6 months. It is what it is. Or you might have a personal reason that you were out of job market. All of those could be justified and in fact turned into a positive. If you're telling an employer that and I'm just making this up, that my brother got this health issue and I decided that, it is more important for me to take care of my tribe and take care of my brother than the income that I had, and I had to make that sacrifice. Oh my God, what does that tell about this person? This guy or this lady is somebody I want to have on my team who cares so much about someone else that they're sacrificing their income for that. So, but you're not going to get that chance to have that story unless you get in front of someone. And the way to do it is through networking.
And on that, the power of networking, we had one question from Steve. How do you approach old business associates whom you've worked with for years, yet the association's fallen by the wayside? Concern that you only come across as approaching when you're in need and not just to check in. It's like, hey, I need a favor. And we all have those, hey, I need a favor people in our lives. And how inclined are we to do them a favor when that's all they want?
Exactly. I think we have a slide later on where there's a quote by Harvey Mackay, who's a famous writer and business person. He has a quote that says, dig your well before you're thirsty. So my recommendation, and I know, we have to pick it up from where we are, but my recommendation is that networking needs to become a way of life. It's kind of hard, to ignore everybody that we have known for years and then suddenly show up and say, hey, by the way, of an opening for me. So it is good to, and we're going to talk a little bit more about, the fact that we do want to dig our well before we're thirsty. But let's say we haven't done that. And now we are in a situation where we do need to reach out to someone. Can you think of a very genuine reason that now you may want to reach out to this person? For me, I did that exercise recently, not because I needed it, but I just felt, hey, I was called to do this. But it applies to every one of us. You have a colleague, you haven't talked to them for 6 years. And now we had this, COVID pandemic, to reach out and find out, hey, Michael, how are you doing? How's your family? What's going on? You don't need to even bring up the, your work situation, but is it, I wouldn't personally find it, especially if I have no time at my hand and I have, I've been laid off or whatever, I got to do something with my time. Why not? Why not reach out to people and see how my people are doing, even people that have not been in touch for a long time? Because, they are in need. I had a colleague when I was at IBM many years ago, Yeah, and then he retired and moved to Florida, and I hadn't talked to him the longest time. And when the COVID hit, I just felt, I got to reach out, see how he's doing. And he was so grateful and so happy to hear from me. His life had changed so much, but it was a great beginning. What I would like to add to what I'm saying is that what stops us from really being good at what I'm just describing is what is going on in our own head. Goes back to that inner game. We start questioning that, oh boy, I'm going to reach out to this person and they're going to be suspicious about, why the hell are you reaching to me after like 10 years or whatever? Well, why don't I pick up a good reason, call them? I don't even have to mention the fact that I'm laid off. They're going to bring it up. Hey, Michael, what have you been up to, right? So I can tell them, say, well, I used to work for XYZ. Just recently, I got laid off and I'm, trying to figure out, what's my next station, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have to mention, hey, do you know of an opening? I mean, that's just like obvious. If you reach out to them with goodwill and genuinely for goodwill, because we all have the reason to do that, and then, if it comes up, it'll come up. Katherine, you wanted to add something to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I always used to challenge myself when I would have networking meetings to be the first person to say, how can I help you? Because I always felt disappointed if the other person was the first person to say that. I'd be like, damn, I missed the chance to look like the bigger person. You can use your competitiveness that way, right?
Yeah.
So you can call somebody and say, hey, I've been thinking about you. And I feel, you can be really honest. I feel really bad that I haven't kept in touch, but I value you so much from the time that we spent working together. And I've never forgotten that. And I wanted to see how you're doing and reconnect and see how we might be able to help each other at this time. I mean, that's completely honest and transparent and also, mutual. So as long as it's mutual and it doesn't come across like, hey, I only need you when I need you because I'm needy right now, then I think you're going to be fine.
Yeah. And, I'll go back to what we added intentionally at the beginning of this presentation. People want to do good. People, this is how we are built. I'm sure there are exceptions too, but most human beings really enjoy being helpful. So if you're talking to them and they realize that you are in need, you don't have to push that. It's going to come up, and most people are going to be thoughtful about it. They're going to share ideas. At least, that's my experience. And I think, again, a lot of it has to do with how we perceive other people. Like, one of the examples that I face a lot with working with our clients, sometimes, when we talk about, using LinkedIn to reach out to people, sometimes, oh my God, but, would I be offending them? I said, come on, it's not like you're banging at their door at their home. You're sending a very benign email request to connect with them. And if they didn't care, they won't care. They, out of our experience with our scripts and all that is, only 20% of people will respond. So those who don't respond, they may not care, they may not check, whatever
They
their
may
reason.
wish they could help, but just feel overtaxed. I mean, don't make it mean something.
Yeah. And for those who do, they love doing this stuff, right? You don't know if all those people you haven't reached out there, how many of them are bored? They would love to hear from you. So a lot of this goes back to how we interpret, reality. The other day I quoted Anais Nin that, we see things not as they are, we see things as we are. So
we project onto other people.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
If we're not generous with our time, maybe we assume nobody else is generous with their time.
Yeah. And on that note, I just want to comment on the slide in front of us. Every one of us has different personalities. And I wanted to pick at, 3 personalities that I see a lot among our clients. Again, these are Myers-Briggs personality types, the INTJs, the ENFJs, the ENFPs. They all have their own characteristics. And, as we go about doing the networking, we want to really leverage what is our strength. For example, the INTJs, because of the introverted side, there's a lot of hesitation. How is this person going to perceive me reaching out? How is this person going to respond to me if I do that? So there's an inertia at the beginning for them to take action. But as I recommended at the beginning, think that you're going to come across people who are even more introverted than you are. You are going to be an example to them by reaching
You
out.
can inspire some people.
Yeah, absolutely. But the other side of it is INTJs are also very thoughtful, very analytical people. So that means, for them, reaching out is not just backslapping and, talking about the last week, game for, 45 minutes. They can be very thoughtful about, okay, what should I be covering in this conversation to be again, helpful to this other person, learn about, what their needs are, and at the same time for me to be able to have an opportunity to share with them, my deck of cards, my stories of what I've been doing. So that's, I pick up on INTJs. I myself am an ENFPs, and with Ps, everything is kind of like open-ended. I could go in a networking event and spend 30 minutes with one person, which is really a bad thing to do. So, I need to become aware of that, I want to hear, especially when you are in-person networking. In-person networking is not an opportunity to talk about what's available, what's opening. It's kind of hard to do that. There's so much noise, there's so much activity. All you want to do is to learn about this person. Where are they coming from? Why are they there? And then just shaking their hand. It was nice talking to you. I hate to monopolize you, and move on. And, and then the same thing with people who are J's, they want to come to conclusion. They go to 2 networking sessions and say, well, I've been to 2 networking sessions and I don't have a job. This thing is not working. Well, as you all know, it takes, this is an investment. This is a way of life. But Katherine, you wanted to add something.
Well, I mean, J's have the strength of being organized, so the J might say, okay, here's my plan for what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, in terms of virtual networking. With the virtual networking, when you hear people go around a group and say something about themselves, what they're looking for, what they have to offer, make a note and then contact them for a one-to-one. The one-to-one is where the introverts can really shine.
Exactly.
Introverts have a kind of intensity. Sometimes they're better listeners. Sometimes they don't talk
Always.
people's ear off as much as extroverts. So that's where the introverts can really establish great one-to-one relationships. You don't need to be a social butterfly to be an effective networker. In fact, the social butterflies sometimes have a great time, but don't really get anything useful accomplished.
Exactly. That's my experience. Yeah, exactly. So since most of you have something to do with project management, so what I was going to suggest is that, we should go about networking like it is a project. Build a networking project plan, especially setting up success milestones, intentionally designing activities that creates successes that will boost your morale, right? If calling the president of Discovery as your first call is a high order and you're hesitant to do that, well, how about if I call my cousin who works at another comparable company or something that you can mark down as an accomplishment and you feel better, you're warming up to it. The other thing that, I really recommend to our clients, I cannot impose it upon them, but we have a tracking system. So I recommend to them that, again, you guys are all in project management. If you don't track it, you don't know where things are, right? You don't know, we have clients who come and say, I've been networking and I haven't really been getting any results. Well, show me. Let's look at your, a campaign.
Metrics.
Yeah, a campaign activity log. Let's see who you talk to, what kind of feedback are you getting, et cetera, et cetera. And you find that they have talked to 2 people in the past 2 months, and that's not going to work.
A lot of people tend to think they're doing a lot more than they are.
So that's where, again, you're leveraging your, project management skills for the networking environment. Have that kind of a tracking log. Am I really doing what I what I was had set to do. And as you go through the process, you can control, based on the victories that you're having. Now you can build momentum, and hopefully you will get to the destination that you will celebrate.
Now, you can also celebrate along the way, and I highly recommend that, especially
Absolutely.
if you find networking hard to do. You really want to reward yourself
Yeah.
for getting out of your comfort zone, doing something that is bold for you, something that is new for you. So maybe you set yourself up, okay, I'm going to have one networking meeting, one-to-one networking meeting, and after that, I'm going to reward myself with whatever it is that you like, a fancy new brand of tea or coffee, or if you want to splurge, a massage. Maybe the massage comes after you do 5, or I don't know. There's lots of ways to reward yourself. And those are process victories. You don't have to just wait until you get a job offer to celebrate. You want to celebrate along the way so that you keep your morale up, so that you feel proud of what you're doing, and that you're enjoying the process, because anybody who's miserable job searching probably makes their job search longer.
Oh yeah, it's not going to work. I was telling another group yesterday that our brain cannot process two things at the same time. We are kind of like either or beings. So you can have fear and hope operating in the head at the same time. So we got to choose.
Or irritation and joy.
Yeah, exactly. I gave the example of the runners, and I forgot the gentleman's name who
Roger
broke
Bannister,
who broke the 4-minute mile. He didn't start running, and halfway through the running, he's wondering, am I going to make it? Am I going to finish this run? Maybe I should stop, or maybe I should go a little bit more. Once you start, you got to go. You can't have the fears hold us back. And I would say 85% of our lack of success sometimes comes with all these preconceived assumptions that are holding us back from being fully effective. So measuring your performance as if you're managing a project is a really helpful tool to use. And this is the Harvey Mackay quote that I mentioned earlier: dig your well before you are thirsty. One of the things you want to do, whether you are starting on a new job, whether you are considering a new job, is to start developing a career advancement plan. Where do I want to go, right? 10 years from now, do I want to do exactly what I'm doing now? What is the vision that I want to build for my career? And based on that vision, start defining goals. And as you go about your networking, and we covered this now a number of times, is asking for little, not reaching out to somebody and say, well, how many openings you got at your company. Sometimes you want to have a hook, get the opportunity to talk to someone before you load them with the needs that you have. And of course, you always look out for the opportunity to
Wait,
also.
so just to give an example of asking for a little. So you would ask them, hey, could I pick your brain about what it's like to work at your company, for example? That's an easy thing for somebody to say yes to. If you call them instead and say, hey, would you recommend me for a job at your firm? Now all of a sudden they're all kinds of uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
Because they don't want to let you down. They don't want to let their company down. They're not sure what to say. So ask them for something easy that they could obviously do. Like, I'd love to hear about what it's like working at your company. I'd love to hear about other companies that you think I should consider for when I'm moving into a new position. I'd love to get your point of view on, my resume. Anything that is easy for them to say yes to is what you want to ask.
I have a client. I had a client. Now she's very, very happily in her new position. She was moving from a very small business, a mom and pop business. She wanted to work for a very large corporation. She wanted to have a different kind of experience. So she researched and identified this really high-tech company, a global company, and she wanted to apply and work there. And based on the stuff that we trained them to do, she had identified a whole bunch of people in this company. And there was a position that she was interested to apply for. So she started to reach out to a whole bunch of people at this organization saying that I'm considering to apply for a position, as if, she has all the choices in the world and all that. I'm considering to apply for a position in your company, and I just want to have a little bit better understanding, as if, it's a good match for me. So
Very smart. So she's
Yeah.
positioning herself as a buyer, not as a seller.
Exactly. And you will be amazed. I'm not making this up. So many of these department managers and, senior analysts, they agreed to talk to her. And in their conversation with her, she got so much information about the company, about the culture, et cetera, et cetera. And then
She got the sales pitches.
yeah, she went in the interview, and one of the comments that she got is, "Oh my God, you know so much about this company," because she did. She had done her homework, but she also had a way to really learn, and now she had a whole bunch of champions within the organization. I'm going to mention one other example before we kind of go to the next slide. We had another client. He had worked at 7-Eleven all his life. And then he decided he wanted to get into health informatics. So he took the degree, everybody can go and study and get a degree. He had no experience, but he got the degree. But he's an amazing networker. So, we talked about, what he needs to do.
And he's an immigrant, right?
He's an immigrant, yeah.
So he didn't have an easy network. He had to work. He had
Oh,
to build
yeah,
it
he's
from scratch.
His network were all other 7-Eleven owners or hotel owners or things like that. He had nobody there. So his very first job was a health informatic whatever at Walter Reed through a federal contractor. And the way it came about was, again, through the networking, through LinkedIn. He had so many champions. One of the people who referred him to the position ended up being one of the interviewers. So
Sweet.
yeah, so it works. It just we gotta have the right mindset about going out and
Before
doing
we
it.
go on, let's ask if there's questions, because I see there's some
Oh, okay.
comments.
Not yet, but we are about at the 15-minute warning, so just
Oh, okay, great.
keep that in mind.
We're going to take Q&A.
Yeah, so let me just move on. And we talked about being clear about your goals, identifying your market. If you are working in a federal contracting business, you want to know all the companies that are in the area. Then you want to focus on 5 or 6 categories of people within these companies that would make sense for you to reach out to. Now, in our experience, the way we train people in terms of how to go and do networking, in all honesty, it doesn't matter who is the first person you talk to, because you are really using this opportunity as a way to get to know the company better, to get a better understanding of, who are the players, who you should talk to. So, pretty much you can start with anybody. And then,
But it's a network, so don't stop with them. Once you talk to them,
Oh,
who else should I
absolutely.
talk to? Make sure you get 1 to 2 referrals from each person you meet with.
Absolutely. When you're in the meeting, in the networking meeting, as we have talked now a number of times, you want to focus on them. Michael, how did you get started in this business? Let them do 60% of the talking, because more they talk, more you would learn about what you should focus on. One of the other things I, encourage our clients to do is to create what I call your deck of cards, each card being one of your success stories, what I did in my last project, what was the problem with the previous project, et cetera, all your accomplishments, right? But you don't know where to start and what you tell them unless you are hearing from them about their story, where they are, what's going on. More you ask those questions, discovery questions, then you would know better as to which one of your cards you should pull out and talk to. And the goal here is, again, develop rapport, make a friend. And by friend, I mean an advocate, a mentor, a champion, a salesperson. When the meeting is over, you want to leave them with a feeling that, hey, I like Michael, I want to help him. And it's a feeling, right? It's not a logical thing. Just like what Katherine was talking about earlier, we can't put our finger on why they like you or why they don't like you. But that's the goal of this networking meeting, to build that rapport. Once you build that rapport, the rest of the things will all fall in place. And the last thing is managing your network performance. Again, just like it's managing a project, right? When in a meeting, you just had a networking meeting, and towards the end, they said, "Well, Michael, do you have a resume?" And my first boss says, "No resume." So I know that's an exaggeration, but one of the things I recommend to our clients is don't volunteer to immediately slap your resume on the desk. There are other things you still need to do. You want to manage the performance of these people. So that means you want to ask them, who else do you suggest I should meet with? They will say, Joe, you should talk to Joe. Well, I don't suppose you know Joe. Is there any chance that I don't suppose to statement for some reason works really effectively, and you may want to experiment with that? Basically, whoever they say you should talk to, you want to see if they can make an introduction there. What other organization? That's a great way to make somebody jealous, right? You're talking to somebody at Leidos, and then you ask them, well, besides Leidos, what are the other organizations I should research? And say, whoa, wait a minute, what's wrong with Leidos, right? And then you want to establish an agreement, just like you're managing with your clients and your team. The meeting is over. Can I? Would you be okay if I get back to you and kind of keep you informed about how I'm doing and how things are going? I think with that,
I want to say one thing about no resumes. I mean, we're in the resume business, so it's a funny recommendation, but I think the idea also is that.
Oh, I didn't mean, by the way, that you don't give a resume to them, but first you want to find out what do they want to do with that resume,
That's
right?
what I was going to say. Hey, don't interrupt.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Your resume is a fluid document. So once you know what their needs are, you can tweak that resume to fit what you heard from them. And then you can give them the resume.
So I added this slide here in case there was other points that you wanted to share regarding the Interview Aikido that you feel would fit well with the networking site that we haven't covered yet, if any.
Yes. So Interview Aikido is our proprietary technique that Michael invented and I developed. And it has a few different components, which I'll touch on very briefly. The first one is building rapport. So always put the focus on how can I be charming? How can I make friends with this person? How can I make them laugh? Just like if it were a first date, you want to be the one that they want to be with, essentially. And the second part is to ask great questions throughout, questions that enable you to uncover their needs. And that is how you can sell yourself. If you don't know what somebody's needs are or pain points are, you can't sell yourself effectively because you don't know what they want to buy. And then the third part is to find out what objections they might have and help them to resolve those. And if anybody wants to learn more about the technique, this is something that we offer along with a mock interview that people learn so much from.
May I add one light comment to this?
Sure.
We talked about, making the other person like you and charm them and all that. And that there's a caveat to that. And that is absolutely true. The other person got to feel to like you and be comfortable with you. But we got to be very careful about not treating them the way we are built with our personality, but how are they built? There's a joke about a 3-letter agency that, the person who's an extrovert there is the person who is looking at the other person's shoelaces as opposed to their own shoelace. So they are all introvert, right? So you don't want to overwhelm an introvert with a style that is not comfortable for them. Making them comfortable is really the beginning of making them happy with that engagement.
For sure. All right, so we are going to take some questions, and if you guys are interested in getting our help with anything from resume building to interview prep to networking coaching, or what direction should I take my career coaching, all those things we would love to talk to you about, and you can get a free consultation at our website there and mention where you found us. So what questions do we have on the table?
Should we close the slide so that we can see everybody?
Yeah, great idea. All right, and then most people are not visible actually, but
that's okay.
What have you got for us, Matthew?
No questions in chat yet. Actually, Beth had any tips on salary negotiations? Do you recommend starting in the middle ground or starting low and working high, or starting high knowing that it'll go lower?
Yeah. So there are a lot of times where we are, as applicant, we are asked, what are your salary expectation? And a lot of times we feel obligated to immediately tell them something, well, I'm making, 120 in my current position, blah, blah, blah. So my very first recommendation to people is that if you are asked, what is your salary expectation, uh, in the most tactful way, and I'm definitely not saying it in the most tactful way, but you may want to kind of return that question by saying, especially, if I don't really know what kind of organizations the audience are coming from, whether you work with like federal contractors, large companies, small companies, but most employers, when they're announcing a position, they have already budgeted for that, right? It's not like, we're gonna advertise for a scrum master, and then we're going to figure out somewhere down the road what we should pay them. That's not how it works. So they have in their mind a range of salary that they have for this position. So if they're asking, what is your salary expectation, one of the things that I train our clients, and I know this sounds kind of complicated, but I'm going to kind of condense and give you the essence of it, is I reframe the question. In other words, they're asking about Apple. I'm going to bring up oranges so that it becomes more difficult to talk about numbers. So if they say, what is your salary expectation? I tell them, and I will struggle in answering this question because it's a tough question. So I would say something like my compensation. So I immediately change the term salary to compensation. Well, my compensation, to be honest with you, consists of a number of different things. It's my healthcare, it's my, vacation, it is my overtime, it is my 401k, it is my XYZ, blah, blah. To be honest with you, I got to go back now and sit down, how they add up to be able to even answer your question.
Salary
So
expectation doesn't mean they have a right to know what you're making right now.
I know, but the whole purpose of this is rather than giving the answer to salary expectation, at the end of that speech that I make, you want to turn around and say, I'm just kind of curious, what have you budgeted for this? Do you mind giving me a range of what you have budgeted for this position? So to at least get a sense for what is in their mind. Now, in terms of negotiation, which was your question, I have a system that I haven't developed, but I adapted from someone, and I would be glad to share that with you. But before that, you wanted to comment on something? Okay. So there is a system. It's called, I think it's called like Ackerman system or Ackerman system, and I'll be glad to email you because it's a formula based on what they offer you. You want to actually use this formula to counter them. But the whole process, the way it works, is you're setting them up to feel really good about beating you down. But as they are beating you down, you are still going to end up better than what you have set as your goal, while you are making them feel really good. Oh my God, we're getting this guy, we're negotiating this guy down. But the way you are reducing those numbers are such that, as I said, you're making them feel good, that they're getting the best deal. And because of the way you're reducing the numbers, it almost becomes also obvious to them that, oh my God, Michael is really struggling. We're squeezing this guy. He can't do any better, anymore. And as I said, at the end, you still end up doing better than they expected. So, and it's called an Ackerman system of negotiation. It was developed by a CIA expert in hostage negotiations. So I kind of adapted that to our business, basically.
Yeah, if you'd be willing to share that, I can make sure all the chapter members get it. So
Perfect.
And then next question, which resume is better for corporate use, a standard format resume or an accomplishment-based resume?
Oh, great question. Definitely standard format, which is reverse chronological. If you go into a functional resume, it is going to make the employer ask why. It's going to wave a little red flag in their face. This person is trying to hide something. So you do want to use the reverse chronological, but that said, your resume should not read like a collection of job descriptions. You definitely should have those quantified accomplishments in there, those success stories in there, in every job, and preferably in every bullet. Now, I mean, not everything can be portrayed as a success story necessarily, but let me give you an example. A basic duty, for example, supervise 5 direct reports. That could be on a job description, and most people would just put a period and that'd be a bullet on their resume. But what I would recommend is put a comma there and add a gerund. A gerund is an ing word, and then tell us what impact that had on the organization. So for example, it could be supervised 5 direct reports, comma, fostering and mentoring their growth and leading to the promotion of 3 within 2 years, or something quantified that shows the impact that you had. So you're not only talking about the activity, but also the outcome.
Can I also say something that you probably will slap my hand for it, because it's a little bit more aggressive approach, but you may, I don't know, maybe you will approve of it. Sometimes we work for huge organizations that have an amazing mission, and it is an honor to work there, and their accomplishments are really important, but we are just a member of that organization. And if we don't really think about what we need to do in our resume, at first glance, it looks like all we did is we attended meetings, we prepared memos, etc. But we are part of an organization with an incredible mission. So in scenarios like that, you really want to step back and say, okay, to what degree would it be justifiable, not only mentioning everything Katherine talked about, but to what degree can I also mention the outcome and accomplishment of my unit, of my team, of my organization as something that I had contributed to.
All right, we're almost at time, so let's answer any more questions very briefly. So,
And last question. So the complimentary consult that you're offering won't get you in the inner circle group, but if one becomes an actual client of yours, they'll be in your inner circle LinkedIn group.
absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, from our perspective, this was great. We could have listened to your expertise for another hour. So definitely got some great feedback in the chat window, and we'll get a post-event survey out and get you some more feedback here in the next week or 2.
Wonderful.
Everybody, I hope you thrive in the rest of this pandemic, and we hope to see you in person sometime later.
Oh
this
yeah,
year.
definitely.
Yep.
Thanks again. Thanks, Katherine and Michael. Thank you.
Certainly. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. We'll have guidance out on the April meeting here soon. So everyone enjoy the rest of your week and seize the day.
Thanks,
All right.
Matt. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good together.